here at home. The petrol pricing war has started in Nigeria, the first time in decades, and this time is between the State Oil Corporation, the NNPC, and the new Dangote refinery. For the first time ever, the NNPC is facing a major competition in the downstream sector of the country's oil industry. Is Nigeria now entering a new phase of petrol pricing based on market forces of demand and supply? Is the era of cheap or low-priced petrol prices now emerging in Africa's most populous economy? And there are more questions from my guest sitting at our Abuja studios. Welcome, Dan Kunle, a public policy analyst and expert in the oil and gas sector. We appreciate your making the studio tonight ahead of the holidays, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Compliment of the season, Bosin.
Thank you.
And compliment of the season to our audience at home and abroad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's hit the ground running. Is Nigeria now entering a new phase of petrol pricing based on market forces of demand and supply?
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm very happy. I'm very excited that as one of the few disciples of market economy and a great fan of market behavior, those of us that are in that arena, we are beginning to like what is happening now. Dangote refinery is beginning to manifest her capacity in production and supply. And I am happy now NNPC is beginning also to behave because they now know that the game has started. I am very happy that President Tinubu himself have cleared the cloud. He said he does not believe in price control. So I'm very happy about that statement. And he believes in market economy. So he is a good disciple of market economy. So, and those of us that are in that arena, we appreciate this. Demand and supply will now take precedent. And if market is to be controlled, we can now see it more scientifically because we are going to have a demand and supply game in Nigeria for the first time. 2024 has been a very good, exciting experience for this country in the energy sector. Unfortunately, the power sector is really, really woeful. But petrol, I think we are going to see something very, very interesting, dramatic in 2025. So yes, the market economy is kicking in the market arena.
So when we look at some of the recent issues being thrown up between the NNPC and Dangote refinery, if you just piggyback about a month or 2 or 3 ago, we've got issues with the crude oil delivery, we've got issues with who's going to be the off-takers, whether it's the IPMAN or whatever, all the various groups. They have issues about investments, across investments in Dangote refinery by the NNPC and what have you. If you put all of this together, do you think the downstream sector is now in a transition that could lead to a new era for Nigeria? Despite this turbulence, as it were, do you think they were part of a transition that will bode very well for Nigeria, both for the economy and for Nigerians in general?
Yes, thank you very much. It is really transitional. We are beginning now to see the journey. It's transitional because Dangote refinery share capacity of 650,000 barrels per day is going to show and lead the market. Is going to be the game changer, as I've always emphasized in the last 2-3 years. So the situation with NNPC and her refineries, and you know yourself their status at the moment. I don't want to dwell much on that because currently they are still technically insolvent. So they may not be able to bring any significant volume to the marketplace compared to what Dangote will bring out. So, but if they embark on the imports of low quality petrol and at maybe ridiculous price, maybe may still even attract some subsidy from government. Well, the revelation that will come out of that is that Dangote refinery supply, capacity to supply, may reveal the volume that this country actually requires. So the transitional game is on. I just hope, and I believe strongly, that the crude supply certainty for the Dangote refinery will not in any way be disrupted, so that we can see the refinery ramping up to 650,000 barrels per day, so that the scale, economy of scale, can kick in. And once it kicks in, I don't know where NNPC will hide at that point. I don't know where they will hide. There will be no hiding place. That's just the truth. So the three refineries they are investing money in the transitional period, they may come up epileptically, and maybe they may survive somehow, marginally, but they will never be efficient in the marketplace. So I'm sorry to say, all the investment in that side is government sinking fund. It will just go to futility as long as it remains in the hand of government. And the real market leader will now take position as long as government does not interfere unfairly. So that is the situation of the transition program now. That's just the status.
Yes, in the downstream sector. But what really are the mechanics of petrol pricing with NNPC, well, bringing some volume to the market, Dangote producing petrol, and of course, in the middle, we've got the imported petrol squeezing into the game. Does it look like we have clarity right now, as it were, or as we said earlier, it's still a transition in which we have the NNPC, we have some imported volume coming in, then you've got Dangote operating as a free enterprise, market-based, private sector-based, 100%, and then looks like, well, it's a little bit muddled up right now. We're trying to understand who does what, who knows what. At the end of the day, Nigerians would want what you refer to technically called cheap petrol.
Yeah, the market, look, the deterministic factor of the pricing of petrol is supply, crude supply, and refining capacity. If you have steady crude supply of various grades required for the refinery, appropriate quantity, and your refining capacity is there, then the price of the crude and the local currency fluctuation against dollar will now be the two deterministic factor of your price. Okay, so volume, the steady quantity supply, and the refining efficiency to deliver to the marketplace. So all the local petrol stations in Nigeria, they can now be assured that they will have access to petroleum product supply. So now they will shift away gradually from NNPC. You can see the price war going on now. So if the local refinery owned by government also have the same access to quality and quantity supply of crude, and they are up and running, maybe they may be able to compete. But it's good for the marketplace. It's very good for the consumers. So the consumer will see stability in price. The consumer will see also varieties of products. So efficiency will now kick in. So it takes time. That is why Nigerian consumer must learn to be patient. Whether in rice production or sugar production or petroleum product production, it takes time for market equilibrium to be attained. So this crisis we had, this hostility we had in the last 1.5 years or 2 years, is part of the reform, is part of the transition. So we are going to now see a market behavior that will show you that he who does not have steady supply of crude into his refinery and a stable, technically sound refinery to refine and bring out efficient product will not be able to compete. But the various petrol stations in Nigeria, retail outlets, will now have choice of where they get products from. And market, like what MRS is just doing now. You can see MRS already is taking a lead by setting a price. So he can tinker with it on weekly basis as the market behaves. So I think the price will be largely determined, as I have said, by volume of crude supply, quantity, availability, refining capacity, and the cost. All the cost. Crude supply cost, refining cost, and then the behavior of the currency, local currency, vis-a-vis dollar. So if we curtail our excessive import and build up our local capacity, you will see that the exchange rate will stabilize and the price of petrol per liter will also stabilize. So this is the journey ahead. We have to manage it carefully.
Very interesting, the way you put it. But let me ask this. Do cheap petrol really come cheap? Or otherwise stated, how would you describe cheap or affordable petrol?
I like that question because I like that question. There used to be a time that was it water or Coca-Cola was almost cheaper than petrol was cheaper than Coca-Cola. Petrol was cheaper than beer in this country. And I used to ask myself that time that, is this possible? So now you are very correct. Petrol cannot be cheap. If you go back to some of our program in the past, I have said it. Petrol cannot be cheap. Electricity cannot be cheap in this part of the world. Aviation services cannot be cheap in this part of the world. There are certain critical life supporting items that cannot be cheap in a developing country like ours.
Let me bug in there very quickly. Let me interrupt you respectfully. Are petrol prices cheap? Do they come cheap anywhere in the world? How do we define cheap petrol?
No. Thank you. No. Nowhere petrol can come cheap in the world. If you don't have internal capacity and competitive capacity, as the case in America, as the case in Saudi Arabia, as the case in Russia, you must have internal capacity to produce the crude, to refine it yourself, and to determine the price, because all the apparatus you need, all the agglomeration of resources you need, instruments, managerial, finance, where you aggregate them together and put them in the basket to determine a liter of petrol, you will see that it can hardly come out cheap unless you have an efficient management of all these factors, all these elements that makes up a final product of petrol. So Nigeria as it is now cannot have, the word cheap is relative, please. So I'm not oblivion of that. The word cheap is relative, zone by zone. So if Nigeria cannot put together all these factors, particularly cost of money and efficient managerial skill, petrol can never be cheap. Electricity will never be cheap because the capital cost for you to attain all this, the OPEX, the managerial skill, the efficiency you need, is rice cheap now? Is sugar cheap? Don't you have abundant land to grow all this? But because you have not succeeded in putting all what are required together, so they cannot be cheap. And the word cheap here, bossing, I have told you, is relative. What is cheap in America may not be cheap here. What is cheap in Saudi Arabia may not be cheap here. What is cheap here may not be cheap in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we're trying to throw a rope around you when it comes to that phrase, cheap petrol. But when folks look back in Nigeria, and we all look back, and myself inclusive, and we say, look, we were buying petrol for 70 naira per liter, 75, 100 naira per liter. So looking back at 1,000 plus or so for petrol price at the pump today, and we reminisce over 125, 75 naira per liter, we'll say, oh yeah, petrol was cheap back then. But that was an era of unbridled import of petrol products in which we were shooting ourselves in the foot, but we say petrol was cheap, and that's where the question's coming from. Now that we're going into what you call fully deregulated downstream sector, so competition is coming in. So give me a sense of competition to be expected in the petrol refining business. Should Dangote Refinery itself expect some level of competition, as it were? NNPC, of course, competition is here now.
Oh yes, he should expect competition. Dangote Refinery definitely should expect competition from the other refineries that are coming in. They may just form what we call an oligopolistic market structure, that's all. He should expect competition, but the issue is, can they scale up to that level? In how many years will it take them to scale up? I'm aware there are refineries springing up here and there, but it's one thing for the project conceptualization to be announced. Oh, I want to build refinery 200,000 barrels in Akwa Ibom, in this or that. But it's one thing to actualize those projects. and get them to become realizable and produce PMS. So how many years will it take down the line? So yes, there will be competition, but what you need to compete, do you really have it when scale comes up? You see, I always emphasize scale. Scale means a lot when we are talking about volume. So as you said that you were buying petrol for 70 naira in those days, what was the volume of petrol we were consuming that time? What was our GDP that time? What was your disposable income that time? How many vehicles were on the road in Nigeria at that time? What was the population of Nigeria at that time? So, and how much capacity have we built at home in the last 35, 40 years? It appears we have not built capacity. This hotel we are staying in here now, as at that time, what you just said now, was maybe $200, $250 per night, as at that time. Today, how much is this hotel? Maybe average is still $250 to $300 per night. But when you translate it to local currency, you will see that in the last 40 years, you and me, the economy of this country, have not built capacity to produce anything competitively. We have not built capacity in electricity production and supply. We have not built capacity in good road development. So we have not built capacity even in high-skilled manpower development. We have no semi-skilled manpower. We have no skilled manpower. We have no sophisticated manpower development environment, framework for the country. So that means you cannot compete. So Dangote will seek competition. But from who? Where are those highly organized people that will compete with such a very highly organized individual and the group? The group are just extraordinary in this country. They are very extraordinary. And therefore, I'm not afraid for the competition that will come. If the market share is 100%, maybe Dangote will take like 90,
what we're seeing now is that
so let the remaining people
competition.
Come. Let them come.
Yeah, the competition. So prices, so NNPC lower price, so Dangote refinery lower price of petrol, then NNPC follow the next day and whatever. Now the NLC, please, whatever, the Labour says they want petrol prices to even go lower.
Bossing, please, let us talk turkey and not chicken. If NNPC wants to continue to use government money to subsidize the same way they have been babysitting the refinery since 2007 to date, and the NLC did not challenge NNPC, why are all these refinery idle? Why are you keeping all this refinery and government money, taxpayers' money, idle all these years? If that NNPC still want to embark on the regime of importation of low-grade petrol for the country, and the government still have that pocket, that deep pocket to do that, let them continue. I tell you, in 3 months, in 6 months' time, the reality will crystallize. You will see clearly that importation deficiency and the bankruptcy hole they have been digging for NNPC. Okay, so all those refineries, they are bankrupt. So this importation window is to cover them up. And it's not sustainable. We have said it time without number. It's not sustainable.
Okay.
It's not sustainable. So let them continue. They will subsidize the importation. Some few people will make money. They will make fortune out of the misfortune of millions of us. That is the only painful aspect.
Let's leave it there. Let's leave it there for tonight. I'm sure those invaluable insights into the developments in that sector is really, really appreciated. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening and enjoy the holiday ahead. Dan Kunle, oil and gas industry expert and public policy analyst.